Alright, so this is going to be a continuation of my last Life is Strange video. In that video, I talked about my experience with like the first two chapters, as well as that I was kind of cautious about finishing the rest of the game. I genuinely had no idea what to expect. In that video, I had a review section, and the other section was more like personal connection side of things. That's what we're going to do here. So my review for this game, going into it, all I knew was that, Max was back, we're at a university, and that she can jump through different alternate realities. When I first got into the game, I didn't like the first 15 minutes. I found very hard to experience. The acting of Sophie, or maybe just the writing of Sophie, felt very forced. Some of Max's performance felt forced and off at times. Max's stuff kind of died by like chapter 2, and Sophie, like, really after that, after you leave the bowling alley, she's very like tolerable, and she actually became one of my favorite characters. And then she died, and then got to experience more of her. And honestly, I felt like going into this game, it's a wild game. It's so I do what I did say in my not my last video that wasn't the Life is Strange video, talking about Lost Records and a lot of like some negative aspects of Deck 9 games, and specifically just Square Enix in general. I do often find they're like emotionally manipulating the audience, unlike Don't Nod. Don't Nod didn't really feel like that. Everything felt along with the story. When it came to Deck 9 games, it felt like, specifically with True Colors and now with Double Exposure, they are constantly like picking things. They know what they like. They know like when the audience will gravitate towards something, and then they'll throw a curveball and try to like spiral it, and then you have to like, fix your way out of these scenarios. And and you might be like, well, isn't that like the whole thing with the first game? And I mean, like, yeah, to a point, but like the way the way they did it in this game, I do feel like they did take a lot of, I would honestly believe, some if not a lot of criticism from True Colors, and just decide to fix those holes in that game into this game. For example, like Gabe's death was so underwhelming in True Colors, but in this game, because there is more experience. Like, for example, if Sophie wasn't alive and she still dies, I still feel like the game would have an effect on that, because of how much time you spend together with her. And even just to find out, like, like you have to, if you were to have to kill her in the end, you would feel like shit. And then people would probably be like, oh, well, that, like, why would they put Max through that again? And it does make sense. It just constantly feels like they're manipulating the audience. I have different views on these things. The first thing is that I don't think it's not justified at all for what Deck 9 Square Enix did to Chloe and Max's relationship. I don't like that relationship. I found it very toxic. No matter how many times I've heard different theories and stuff, it didn't work for me. So I preferred Chloe to be dead, and I enjoyed my experience throughout that way. But I completely understand people that are pissed off that the relationship got severed, and then Max has to go through hell. I do think a lot at the end of the day, though, like, one of the main memes about Life is Strange is, as soon as a trailer for a new game gets announced, they're like, oh, well, time to go through like past trauma again, or something like that. Like, it's a core aspect of the game and franchise. With this game, to me, Max is set up to be a character that is trying to move on, and we don't get that from any of the other games. Max is emotionally vulnerable in the first game. In Before the Storm, Chloe is emotionally vulnerable. True Colors, Alex is just an adult with anxiety issues. Like but with this game, I I do feel like they could have took any character. They could have took Chloe. They could have took Max. They could have taken Alex. And the reason a lot of people think, oh well, the sequel. There didn't need to be a sequel because everything was finalized in the first game. But then people still have that theory where it's like, okay, but you got to keep in mind, yes, Max was so devoted to Chloe, and then the storm happened. But like, you saved Chloe so many times throughout the first game that eventually she's going to die regardless. And I'm honestly surprised. A lot of people are surprised that they didn't just do that. They didn't just kill Chloe right off, because that also would have pissed them off. But at least they took the safe route and be like, okay, well, no, they just broke up. But like, consider the amount of damage that Max had to accept, and Chloe, it's not going to be like a changed person after that experience. So it just feels like it makes a lot more sense in that regards. Now, if we look at the other way around, where Chloe's dead and Max has to go through this again, throughout the game, Max is still displaying a little bit of that vulnerability. She hasn't moved on from Arcadia Bay. She hasn't moved on from the past trauma she went through. They finally decided to deliver an experience that a lot of people kind of wanted, or like a more satisfying experience that some people kind of wanted to see from the first game, or maybe a lot of people wanted to see from the first game, which I thought was done very well. And that's the fact that when Max is in a very tough position where she knows what's going to happen. The storm's happening, and she can't go through it again to kill Sophie and basically relive the same event, almost the same events from the first game. She can't go through that again. So she decides to actually fight the storm by going into it. Now, in the graphic novel series, she does fight another storm. She stops it somehow. I don't remember how, but I was finally glad to see that they decide to do that. This shows that Max is finally no longer afraid and decided to face. She wasn't backing down, and she decided to face the outcome that she wanted, which was to keep Sophie alive and also get rid of the storm. And I think that was done very well. For anybody that says like this is a good sequel, it is. It honestly is. Now, it's not a good sequel in the regards of like a continuation story from the first game, but it was a very well done example of character building, where you could argue, well, yeah, the character was already well established. I think we needed this. I think it makes Max a really strong character, a stronger person, and to show that how much he, cares for so many characters, that this was a very selfless act. But for her to stand up and do that, I really think it was a very powerful moment that we didn't get to see in the franchise outside of like Alex talking, or making Jed confess that he killed those men. That was like probably the only thing that I can think of that remotely had like an impact that was as strong as the scene where Max actually goes into the storm with Sophie. I was like, my jaw was on the floor. I was like, holy shit, they're actually doing this. And I do feel like this game is both a love letter to the first game and, the other Deck 9 games, because it does improve and do a lot for both of those franchises, uh, whatever way you look at it. It's terrible that they decided to get rid of a part of history from the first game, but at the same time, like, for a lot of people that do empathize with Max, people connect with Max and see Max as their own character, I would expect people to be celebrating the fact that she went from struggling person from, Arcadia Bay, to a very strong, independent woman that is willing to save another person's life in the power of, I don't want to say the power of friendship, but the power of, I guess, selflessness. It was so good on how they did that. Now that being said, it kind of took away a lot of other talking points, but that's like pretty much all I have to say at the end of the day. But regarding my other talking points, there's a specific moment in chapter 3 where when Max is going over the evidence, and this might have happened in the previous games, I'm not sure, but back to like the voice acting, or at least the writing. In this case, it wasn't the voice acting. In case it was the writing. Like Max was saying, Max posed the question, did I rewind time to go back and kill Safi? And I thought that was the dumbest thing that she could have possibly ever said. Honestly, like, I kind of understand, like, she's trying to process, like, how she would have been the one to kill Safi. But that's one of the dumbest lines from the game that I genuinely was pissed off about. I was like, how stupid are you guys? Why would you write this? This is so stupid. So that brings us to, like, I guess, like, some plot twists and stuff. I like the idea of the professors being suspicious and not knowing about, oh, why was Safi's book canceled? Who is, I already forgot her name. Who was Safi's friend? Was Vin being suspicious? Was, her mother being suspicious? And who can you trust? Who can't you trust? There are two characters that from the game that I really didn't care about, but although one of them did have some funny voice lines, and I cannot help but think that he was definitely a breath of fresh air within the franchise to have someone like funny and kind of over the top, but not too try-hardy, which was. But he was a character I didn't bother with. He was apparently he was a Braxis member. The other thing with Abraxas, like, I do think a lot of people, like, going into this, a lot of people thought, well, this whole murder thing was gonna be centered around like a secret society. And while that could have worked, I would have felt like too much of a Ubisoft game thing, and I feel like it would have been overdone and dumb. I'm glad they went the sci-fi route in that regards. The other character is Loretta. Loretta is a character that I originally, was like, I didn't know how to feel about her. Some people thought, like, oh, she's a reincarnation of Rachel and whatnot. I found her as a character that reminded me of some people from both high school and college that I just didn't want to bother with. I did find her interesting, and listening to the voice actors talk about her and who she is as a character and stuff like that, I did not care one bit. They did not do justice for that character at all. The rest of the other characters, though, I really appreciated, especially Gwen. Gwen is an amazing character. I think that Gwen is such a great character. Definitely a character that reminds me of someone from I can't think about who they remind me of. The first thing that I don't know if this is a controversial thing to say, but definitely a little bit of Davey Havoc, and the other thing was like Vampire the Masquerade. Like she reminded me of a character of like people of that nature. Was it Lucas? Yes, the Lucas. Yeah, there was Lucas. Lucas was a good character. They definitely like when they designed him, I feel like they definitely had a little bit of, oh, let's try to make him look a little bit like Jefferson. Definitely made him a very an asshole. They made him a really good asshole. But at the same time, like with the different timelines and stuff, like that's another thing too. With the different timelines and the different ways they had like the characters acting, some of them are more angry, some of them are more like just like easier to approach. They kind of they took that one negative criticism that I had with, or well, some other people had too, especially with the first game, specifically with the first game. Whenever you would say something, this character would be standoffish, and then you would rewind it, and then their character would like have a different voice line and be in a different tone. And some people felt like that was forced. That worked in this game because there's two different timelines where different things are happening. And I applaud them for nailing that down really well. But the less interesting characters outside of Loretta and the other ones, like the mother, for example, like they did a good job enough keeping everyone tied with the story that this like any other side characters, like it didn't matter. And characters that were like I would deem as like less interesting part of the story wasn't nearly as bad as True Colors, where you would have to like talk to people that sound like they didn't want to be there in the first place. I think they did a really good job with the whole like university atmosphere in general. I went to a university yesterday for an open house, and I got the same vibe as like in this game. This game, this university kind of remind me a little bit too much of like Hogwarts in a way. But that being said, like I did enjoy. It still had that kind of welcoming community-ish atmosphere from True Colors, but in this time around, everybody felt like it was more like towards like the first game, where everybody's like at the school and you develop those connections with each character and everybody's closer together, or they're, you know, against you for whatever choices you make. It did both a good job of like blending those two things together. You could argue just improved the first game, but I did like that atmosphere from True Colors. Even if I didn't like the characters, a lot of them were still willing to be on your side if you chose the right decisions. But yeah, this time around it was like a lot more character, and it was because it was done at like the university, like at a school. It's more like the first game where it's like, well, this time, like, yeah, you could have like a Victorian chase as like your friend, instead of just being like, you know, a character that's like two-sided. This game didn't really pull me emotionally until probably like in a good way. Finally would probably been the whole storm thing, going into the storm, figuring out what's going to happen, and then just talking to Savi, and Savi like being more, I guess, happy that she's alive. I thought about it. It's like, well, you know, like with the other games, like a lot of Life is Strange is just suffering. It's literally just suffering. Suffering through the first game, definitely suffering through Before the Storm. True Colors is pretty much suffering because, you know, losing someone. But in this game, it felt more positive and uplifting, which was a very good breath of fresh air that I knew that they wanted to make. This felt like a Life is Strange game that they always wanted to make. They covered a lot of the negative things I had with True Colors, and they they cooked. They really cooked and brought this game into it turned this game into something that I am so glad that it exists. Now, the other thing that I also want to say is, from my perspective, like I said before, I didn't care about the Max and Chloe relationship. I almost forgot to mention Amanda. Amanda is a character that I liked. I found her more like, she kind of reminded me a lot of Steph. And I feel like when they wrote her like a Steph character. She seems like a nice person, but at the same time, like she has more friend energy than anything. And I genuinely felt more of a connection with Savi. I'm surprised they didn't go the romantic route with Safi, but I think I know why. It's because they didn't want to have another Chloe mishap. If they would have had, I would have felt like if people got attached to that, they would sever it in the next game or something like that, which would suck, and I fucking hate them for that. Because Safi is easily one of my favorite Life is Strange characters. Amanda is someone that felt like she was trying to be a little too much like Steph, but she also had a lot more. She had more of a welcoming nature compared to Steph, but that also could just be like, considering what Steph went through, considering that relationship you have to kind of build up in True Colors. In this game, she just felt like, someone you would want on your side. And I'm still tied between whether or not I like that or not. She definitely felt more believable as someone that I could trust next to, like, Savi. As much as I love how well she's written and just I love her in general, there's definitely red flags about her that you can't ignore. She could easily become another Chloe, but I think maybe they decided that if we have them, and if we did like add or start a relationship, people would just have the same criticisms as the first game. And in this way, you have a character more like Steph, that's like that likes things that, well, they have a lot of common. They like music. Back to like the example of like the characters acting different in different realities. Amanda was one of the more like believable ones and honestly, I liked what they did with her. How in the dead world she doesn't want, like, she knows that Max is emotionally not available, and then in the alive world, she's like, she doesn't know about everything, and that like they're technically still dating. And I thought that was done really well. And the other thing that I really thought was done extremely well from this franchise, and I'm so glad they finally decided to do it, is I feel like this game really showed actions have consequences in the end. Originally I thought they were going to do that like throughout the rest of the game, but again, it's like with really whatever choices you make in the game, unless you make the negative decisions, you're gonna pretty much be able to turn relationships around. Specifically with Gwen, I chose to burn, or I didn't choose to burn the USB. I chose to keep it. And then I asked Gwen about why she had the book canceled, and that got her mad. And then it said at the end of the chapter that, oh, this person's gonna be like more reluctant towards how you approach them. And then and then just in the end, like, look, screwed up. Here's the thing. Oh, you're not mad at me anymore. Okay. But in the end, what they did something pretty not insane, but pretty cool that I'm surprised they did, which was the fact that decisions that you made throughout the game, other characters saw in what you did in each reality, and are gonna probably be more reluctant to trust you in the future, which was actually crazy, but I respect it. I respect it. Oh yeah, I also forgot to mention about like the detective character, and oh yeah, no, another thing too. is that the characters that know you have powers was finally it was a good decision that Deck 9 made. Also, like having another character with powers and finding out, like that was something that I knew they, again, was something that they probably wanted to do from the start. They just didn't know how to write. Another controversial take that I forgot to mention is I do think that one of the reasons why they brought Max back was just easier writing, because they can't write a main character's story with shit. For example, True Colors, as well as and then having that backstory stuff. The backstory stuff was not handled well with Alex and True Colors. In this game, they at least did something with Max's emotional trauma, and they made her realize, well, if I can accept what happened, then I can save Safi. And again, that's another reason why I really want to talk about the next section. But I'm glad they did that. Now, a theory I actually had, and it might be a wild theory, but stop me if I'm wrong. I think maybe the game was originally centered around Safi, but then because they couldn't basically piece together a final conclusion for Safi's story, they just decided to rewrite it and bring Max back. Because they wasted so much time, they decided to take an already existing character and be able to, if they don't know it, if they don't know how to continue, then they fall back on past history with Max. That's why they have that whole situation where you go into back to Blackwell bathroom, and you have to go into the Jefferson chair and all that. Now again, whether or not I feel like that's ethical, whether or not I think that was a good decision making, I enjoyed playing it, but from someone that also still appreciates Don't Nod, I still think that it was kind of scummy to do. But that being said, at the end of the day, I have so much that I love about this game that everything kind of just overshadows it from the first playthrough. I must stress that from the first playthrough. I did finish this game on the 29th, and today is the 4th. So do keep in mind that if I wait, if I do decide to play the game again, a lot of my original thoughts and opinions can change. Where I'm sitting at now, though, is that this game is a 9.5 for me. It's the highest ranking I gave. Before the Storm is an 8.5, and Wavelengths was a 9. This is a 9.5. I loved it. I will definitely go back to it, despite a little bit of their issues. Oh yeah, there was also some audio issues, which kind of made me think about whether or not I want to give it a 9.5 or a 9. The audio issue is that sometimes when the characters are speaking, it almost sounds like they're hitting their microphone. The actresses are hitting their microphone, which was weird. But again, I don't know if that was I don't know if that's probably a technical problem, but I really liked this experience, and I will definitely expand more on why in the next section.
So something I forgot to actually mention is one of my favorite scenes from the game, and that's when Detective Alderman comes to your house and starts asking you questions. And honestly, this scene is probably one of the best scenes from Life is Strange, because it puts you in a very anxiety-inducing, even panic attack, to the fact that he is so dating back to that one scene, whenever you're trying to sneak out of Moses's laboratory thing, and when you spawned in the telescope and he questions you on that, I was like, oh my god, this is intense. This is gonna be insane. And to make matters even more intense is the fact that you had your picture with you pointing the gun at Safi, and he finds, or well, he didn't find it, but he saw it. That moment was so good. I know that some people have been asking like why they didn't like expand on like where he went after he found him the other version of himself. And I know in the game it also talks about like how now like I guess he doesn't exist, or Moses commented on that. He's like, well, I was looking for Detective Alderman. It says like he never existed or something like that. So obviously my theory is because a sequel's set up, he's probably gonna make another comeback. I would say it's inevitable. But yeah, no, I cannot believe I forgot to mention this moment. This moment was awesome. But also on top of that, I think what makes the scene even more great is the fact that he comments on Max's past experiences from the first game, like, well, 2 people died and you came from a place where there's essentially a serial killer, and then you show up here, no deaths, and then Sophie's dead, so I'm tracing it back to you. I thought that was really clever in how they commented on Max's past. I feel like that wasn't really done a whole lot throughout this game, but that moment was pure gold. The acting performance was phenomenal, and the fact that I was genuinely like frightened by where this conversation was gonna go. Like, tell me where the telescope came from. That was like, yeah, that was peak.
So in this section, I will be bringing up events from the last video, or the last Life is Strange video. I will simplify everything as in a summary, just to understand where I'm coming from with this segment. My relationship with the first Life is Strange game nowadays is a game that, while I know a lot of people tend to say like, oh, you know, this game made me a better person, or this game has had a real effect on me throughout my life, I consider the first game to be like a reminder that there will be choices in life that you make that you will probably regret. They might have a very large impact on you, and it will, affect the future in either a positive or a negative way, and that's kind of that's what I think about when I think about the first Life is Strange game. My personal experience with that is in high school, when I turned 16, I was really depressed to the point where it got so bad that I was having severe thoughts, and at the time it was just so much pressure. I felt like I couldn't talk to anybody, so I basically told everything to a stranger, and despite them getting me help, I feel guilty that I traumatized that person from that experience. And the other points that I made in the video too is that another topic that I also covered was how the first game and Before the Storm have a very negative outlook on authority. And with one of my most severe example for relating to that specific segment was that in college I was in an SSW program, and I took a counseling class. I did a demonstration. I did 2 demonstrations, and in the second demonstration that I literally shared a real story while I was playing the role of a client and my professor was playing the role of the counselor. Someone recorded the entire demonstration, posted it online, and the college basically didn't do anything about it. The dean at the time ruled it as well, because it wasn't a targeted attack. The person's not kicked out of the program, and that it was left up to me to decide the consequences. I thought, well, what makes the most sense is to tell their field placement that they did this, and they're like, oh, well, we can't do that because it happened at college. There's no reason for them to know that happened, and like that one there. And I also like said, like, it should also like just affect if they're gonna hire, or if someone's gonna hire this person to work for their agency, they will see that, you know, that person broke confidentiality. This person, while it wasn't a malicious attack and it wasn't a targeted attack, I didn't even know this person. They didn't care that they did it. They cared when they got caught, and they blatantly actually said that they could even do it again. I already lost trust in the education system back in elementary school. I had a very positive experience through high school, but then going into college to find out that, you know, college is a business. They only care about their the face, their branding. They don't want to look bad if something like this happens, but also at the same time, apparently, when that specific dean was still in charge, this situation happened 4 times, including my time, to like first years and other professors that were involved. Like, they knew that this already happened, and they still continued to let it go on, and no consequences for anyone. But then the dean got fired, and another dean stepped up, who was a woman. I wish I had her when the time I was at my college, because she probably would have dealt with it in a legitimate way than whatever that guy did. So I appreciate while, you know, Life is Strange is kind of centered around, well, at least, you know, the first game and Before the Storm were centered around like young adults, also adolescents with like, I think Chloe's 14 in Before the Storm. That I really appreciate the fact that yeah, you could argue, well, you know, they're teenagers and they don't think they know it, or they don't know any better, but at the same time, like, you know the game, you know in the first game that even if you don't report Nathan, he's still going to like talk to your parents and say that you're causing trouble when you're doing nothing. I had that experience back in elementary school, so I love the fact that I actually could relate to the game in that aspect. Now that brings us to Double Exposure. Double Exposure to me is a game that is all about moving on, and I appreciate media of all kinds that display that message, but I never felt that message deeply until I played this game. And a lot of everything that I wrapped up in the last segment kind of just ties into this. My specific playthrough of this game, like, taught me, like, thinking back to playing the other games, you know, the first game reminds me of a bad experience in high school. Before the Storm reminds me of just the pandemic, because death of youth. And this game showcases moving on, and I honestly, with everything about this game, I genuinely felt like the first time that I felt like I was ready to move on was actually going to college, with that whole experience that happened in high school. That happened in 2019, so I had this experience on my mind basically till 2022. Yeah, I had that experience on my mind till 2022. In 2022, the day that my friend group asked me or kind of encouraged me to participate in the first demonstration in the counseling class. And the first demonstration, I shared that story through high school, and I felt like all that weight was gone. It was finally put to rest. But to have that person know that story happened to me, and even though they didn't record that specific demonstration with me and my friend, where I literally shared to someone that I've never told this story to in front of the class, to have someone know that and still record was really damaging. And while I was so broken, the fact I couldn't, like, a lot of people around me, even professionals, so many people encouraged me to go to the board and just get this dealt with, done right. When I tried contacting the dean would ignore me, and I just kept focusing more on college. I just wanted to pass my program, and after that, I had that regret. Now, it could also be because I was reminded consistently by my coworker at field placement, my friends sometimes when we just have these conversations. But now it's 2024. I have a job. I'm happy. I have a lot of good things going on. When I played this game, I just everything hit me again in the same way. While I did stop forgetting about that thing that happened in high school at that time, I just embraced it now. But I think I'm finally over the event that happened in 2022, which was having my privacy shared online. And this game did a really good job at showcasing that, Max is triumphant overcoming of that past trauma she went through in the first game. That I really resonated with that. This is everything that I've wanted from a game to a game that I connect with, to deliver a message that's so powerful like this. The fact that Max is done with basically repeating history, and the fact that she decides to actually fight the storm with Sophie is something that I think about, while, in my struggles, I have my friends, but I have someone very close to me that I can share that with. I can trust that person, even though for a long period of time I went years without being able to trust people, especially in this college experience really tarnished that. I still have people close to me, but specifically one person that I could never give up, because I have that person in my life. And that's kind of how I view the whole thing with Sophie. And I mentioned it before, that they could have easily made it a romantic relationship, but at the same time I feel like that would also ruin it, because even having that relationship have struggles, and it's just easier to write friendships well, especially in Life is Strange, where you don't have to necessarily factor the deep side of things, because it's not so serious. Even with Amanda, you can either be your friend or be your girlfriend. She seems like that person that I would trust and be close with, but I wouldn't want a relationship because I don't want to ruin that trust and that connection. But especially with Sophie, I do think that Sophie is one of the best characters to come out of the series. And the fact that, Max was able to, Max was fighting for something that was justified, unlike the first game. And I know that's a really hot take, but um, she's and I feel the one thing that I didn't like is that I mentioned selfless nature, but at the same time, like, she is doing it for herself. She knows that it's hard to it's hard to tell with this, because there's, depending on which play style or playthrough you go, you're either going to be someone that either cares about themselves towards, not wanting to repeat the past again, or you are that person that cares about everybody and you genuinely want to keep Sophie safe. And I have that. I've thought about that. And like with my playthrough, pretty much with every game, I like to, unless someone really pisses me off or really just I don't get a good vibe with them, I feel like it just makes sense to be friendly with everyone, because that's kind of how Max, because I do relate to Max in that aspect, especially like when I did have my college experience, that I do want to be that person that's trying to, not necessarily play all sides, but I want, if I'm somewhere new, I want to be able to trust, I want to know the people that I can trust, because and then like with the murder, like, you gotta stay on your feet, you gotta know the right people to stick with. And that might have been like a little bit of a convoluted statement, or just this might just be a convoluted segment in general, but I feel like I covered myself, like explained everything that to me really resonated with me, and I'm not trying to tell anybody to have the same thoughts as me. Everybody has their own experiences, and because there's different choices that you can make in this game, it's whatever choices you think are best, you have your own opinion. But for me, like, when I think about games that have had an impact on me, this is 100% a game that's had an impact on me. I definitely will continue to play this. I will 100% replay it. I love the nature. I love this setting. It's a cozy game for fall/winter time, and I'm glad they released it at this time. It's great. I have another video coming next that's going to be talking about specifically the music in this game, and an interesting issue I have with I don't know if it's I'm gonna just say Square Enix at Deck 9, but I'm pretty sure it's just strictly with Square Enix. Yeah, I wonder, I will be mentioning that more in the next video, but I'm curious to see what's going on with that. Anyways, that's the video. Peace.